It's no secret that kids today are growing up around computers. They use them to communicate with each other, to play games, to complete homework assignments, and even to learn. How much they can learn from a computer is a matter of some debate, and that is the focus of my research. My name is Carrie Dilley, and I teach the third grade at an elementary school in Indiana. This is my 8th year teaching and my second in the third grade. At my school, students are grouped according to their ability level for mathematics instruction. We offer 4 sections at my grade level with ability levels ranging from high to low. If 1 is the highest group, my class ranks 3rd overall. My students are students who struggle with mathematics. My school started doing this ability grouping for math about 5 years ago, and I have always taught the low achievers. Over time, I started to notice some trends. My students lacked skills in 2 incredibly important areas of mathematics, making it rare for them to achieve any level of success in math. Those 2 areas are basic facts and problem solving. I know that sounds simple, maybe even obvious, but if you do not know your basic facts, every aspect of mathematics becomes next to impossible. It's like you're fighting an uphill battle every time you start to do a problem. Problem solving, or solving word problems, may seem obvious too. But without basic problem-solving skills, students don't even know where to begin when they're presented with a word problem. Increasing student capacity in these 2 areas can monumentally increase their overall mathematical abilities and success on high-stake testing. It also raises their confidence and makes them feel good about themselves. Going back to the idea of computers in education, lots of companies are coming up with mathematics remediation programs. There's ALEX, First in Math, IXL, Mathletics, and many others that are designed to fill in the certain gaps that children have because they moved schools or they were sick or their brains just weren't ready to learn a concept at the time it was presented to them. My school offers First in Math at my grade level, but all of these programs set out to do basically the same thing. Through an artificially intelligent, web-based mathematics remediation program, they identify where these knowledge gaps lie and seek to fill them by offering different kinds of remediation, mostly game-based, and this increases students' overall mathematics skills. This is great, but these programs cost a lot of money. It's expensive to get subscriptions to the website, access to computers, maintenance on those computers to keep them up and running, and they'll have to provide teacher training and lots of other things. They also take up a lot of class time, which adds another layer of complexity for teachers and administrators. This leaves a lot of people wondering if these programs are worth the time, effort, and money that they cost. All of this setup finally brings us to the question that I've been researching for the last semester. Which is better? Targeted remediation from a state-licensed teacher with several years' experience teaching low-achieving students mathematics, or a computer program designed to identify student ability levels and skill gaps and offer games and prizes in the form of points to increase student knowledge of mathematical concepts. That's a lot of words, so let me put it a simpler way. When it comes to remediating kids who struggle with math, who is better, teachers or computers? Lots of studies have been conducted, but most of the research studies 2 different groups of kids in 2 different classrooms or different schools or even different towns, and any number of factors could sway the data for or against teachers or computers. Even having 2 teachers who teach next door to each other doesn't remove all of the variables, because even if they're presenting the same material, they're still going to have different teaching styles and other factors that can affect results. I wanted to research with the smallest number of variables possible, so I split my class in half and put half on the computer for 15 minutes each day, and the other half with me for the same type of remediation that was presented by a teacher instead of a computer. The 2 sets received identical instruction, and both received remediation. The only thing that was different was the type of remediation that the students received. For the first session, I remediated the students on their basic facts, and for the second, I remediated the students on their problem-solving skills. I conducted 2 sets of experiments that took place over 2 17-day periods. I took the kids and split them into 2 groups using a website called random.org, which can be used to generate random lists. I called the groups Group A and Group B. Because I work with low-achieving students, I have been given the greatest gift that a teacher can be given, an assistant. My assistant, Mrs. Julie Wilhoit, not only does an amazing job with the students during class time, she happily agreed to take the first in math group to the computer lab during both sessions and monitored their remediation so that my focus could be solely on my teacher-led remediation group. This experiment would not have been possible without her assistance, and I cannot thank her enough for all that she has done for me and the students at our school. For the first session, Group A was on the computers with Mrs. Wilhoit using First in Math, and I took Group B with me to work on basic facts remediation. We worked on things like fact families, little tricks for adding 1, 2, 9, 10, and 11. We played board races, had dice games, number tile games, added money, and many other remedial activities. We played a lot of games, had a lot of good discussion, and we added a lot of numbers. Meanwhile, Group A was working on a part of the First in Math program called Just the Facts. Students can work on addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. For the purposes of this experiment, students were told to start with addition, and if they completed that program, they could move on to subtraction. This program does a baseline test with students on a 10 by 10 math table. It then breaks down the table into sections, and based on how well the students performed on the pretest, it teaches them the facts that they don't know. It then retests them on all 100 facts, reteaches the ones they don't know, retests, reteaches, until all of the facts have been memorized. Students earn virtual stickers and gold and silver stars based on how many facts they answer and how quickly they can answer them. A player of the day is awarded for the child who has earned the most stickers from the day before. What one does with virtual stickers is still a mystery to me, but the kids seem to enjoy the program. Jumping back a few steps. Before we began our first 17-day session on basic facts remediation, I administered a pretest. Prior to administering the pretest, I spent some time thinking about exactly how to administer any kind of a pretest. My initial reaction was to take the easy way out and let the computer do all of the work. I was going to have the students complete a set of facts on First in Math and record a score, but then I realized that this would be wildly unfair to the students who worked with me, the teacher-led remediation group, because there would be factors like the ability to know where the numbers were at on the keyboard and other little ins and outs of the First in Math program that the group on the computers would obviously have a leg up on, and of course the same was true for my group. It wouldn't be fair to make the computer-based kids write their numbers down on a piece of paper. I needed a third option. Flashcards ended up being the best option that I could come up with. To keep things extremely fair and consistent, I was the one who turned the cards, not the kids. I used the same set of flashcards for both the pre-test and the post-test, and they only covered the addition facts from 0 to 9. I made sure that I had enough cards so that even if a kid answered one question every 2 seconds, which seemed unlikely, especially on that pre-test, I would have more than enough. I didn't want to run out of cards mid-session because that would further complicate calculating their scores. I tested the kids for 2 minutes each on both the pre-test and the post-test, and recorded the number attempted and the number correct for each child. The pre-test data was collected right before the first session started, and I collected the results for the post-test immediately after the 17-day remediation period ended. Obviously, I had the results from the pre-test throughout the first session of remediation, but I had no idea how to analyze them. I needed a way to compare them to each other, but I was stumped as to how to do this in a way that was fair to every child. The easiest thing to do was to calculate a percentage, but because each child had completed a different number of cards in their 2 minutes that they were tested, that didn't seem fair. A kid might score 100% but only attempt 5 cards, and conversely, a kid might get 14 cards wrong but attempt 42 cards and score 67%. So while their number wrong was much higher than the other kid, the number correct was much higher too. How could I possibly compare those two scores? After I had the results of the post-test, I finally came up with a way to compare the results for each student against each other without just comparing their percentages. This is what I did. I calculated the average number of flashcards attempted, not correct, attempted by each student. I included both sets, the teacher-led remediation group and the First in Math group, in this average. The average number of flashcards attempted by all students for the pretest was 28. I then divided the number of flashcards that each student got correct by 28. Students who got more than 28 flashcards correct did score over 100% by this calculation. I called this the new percentage, and it allowed me to compare the number of cards that each student had gotten right against each other in a way that seemed fair to all students. I followed this same model with the post-test data, using the average number of flashcards attempted by all students on the post-test, which was 39. Again, students who got more than 39 cards correct earned a score over 100%. After I had these two new numbers, I subtracted the students' new percentage pre-test scores from the new percentage post-test scores and called this score the percent improvement. A couple of students did score a negative number, meaning that they scored better on the pre-test than the post-test for this score. Once I had all of these numbers, I was finally able to separate the students into their two groups, the first and math group and the teacher-led remediation group. I then averaged their percent improvement scores together and came up with the following numbers. The percent improvement for both groups combined was 13%. Group A, the first and math group, improved their score from pre-test to post-test by an average of 14%. Group B, the teacher-led remediation group, improved their score from pre-test to post-test by an average of 11%. The difference between the first and math group and the teacher-led remediation group was about 3% in favor of the computer-led group. A 3% difference between the two groups does not seem like much, and it could even be considered negligible. However, there is a slight increase in the growth scores in favor of the first and math group. To get even a slight difference between the two groups in such a short amount of time is significant. Even if it was by only a little bit, the first and math group did outperform the teacher-led remediation group. If we're being honest, this was the result that everyone expected. A computer can put so much more information in front of students, and it can target their individual needs so much easier than even the best teacher can, which I certainly am not. So it's not surprising that for basic facts remediation, the kids who got their remediation from the computers outperformed the kids who got their remediation from their teacher. As soon as we had completed the first session of the experiment, we immediately began the second session, which remediated the students on problem solving. Once again, students were given a 15-minute remediation period, either on the computer or with the teacher, and all students were given identical instruction. This session also started with a pretest. This time around, it was made up of 6-story problems. Students were given an unlimited amount of time to complete the pretest, but were not offered any help with it at all. After the pretest was completed, Mrs. Wilhoit and I switched group. I took the A group that had been on the computers for the first session to work with on teacher-led remediation, and Mrs. Wilhoit took the B group to the computer lab to work on a part of First and Math called Know and Show that teaches students how to solve word problems. Students are given word problems and must choose the answer from 4 choices. All areas of mathematics are covered by these know and show problems, from geometry to algebraic equations, measurement to number sense, and even some probability. After a few days of working on these problems, students started taking a pencil and paper with them to work out the problems by hand. Group A worked with me in the second session for teacher-led remediation on solving story problems. We spent a lot of time talking about the steps of problem solving. They came up with 6 steps of problem solving in adorable student language. Here they are. Number 1, read the whole darn thing. Number 2, find the keywords. Number 3, decide if it's addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. Number 4, write the problem down vertically. Number 5, solve it. And number 6, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Once these steps had been established, we worked many problems out together, highlighting keywords, lining up place values, making sure that our answers made sense. We worked individually, in pairs, in small groups, and as a whole group, even though that whole group was only made up of 8 students. Again, all students received identical instruction during this time. When it came time to post-test for the second session, I honestly had no idea what to expect from either group. I used exactly the same set of 6-story problems for the post-test that I had used for the pre-test and graded it in the same way. The results from the post-test were truly surprising. The students as a whole did very poorly on both the pre- and post-tests. There was one question that was worth a lot of points because it was a multi-step problem, and most students had no idea how to solve it on either test, which resulted in very low percentages for all students. The overall average for the pre-test was 9% correct. The average for the A group, the teacher-led remediation group on the pretest, was 12%. The average for the B group on the pretest was 6%. Keep in mind these groups were random, so the fact that there was such a difference between them was coincidental. The overall average for the post-test was 13% correct, but the average for the A group, the teacher-led remediation group, was 10%. They actually decreased their scores by 2%. Fortunately for me, a 2% gain or loss is fairly negligible in the world of research, so we're going to call it even on this group and say that they didn't really have any gains or losses. But the average for the B group's average was 15% on the post-test. That is a 9% gain. The 9% gain by the first in math group was completely unexpected, especially when you consider that the teacher-led remediation group actually decreased their score by 2% from pretest to post-test. This result was supposed to say that the teacher-led remediation group ever so slightly outperformed the first in math group, but that the difference was really pretty negligible. A lot like the scores from the first session with the basic facts, where the kids on the computer slightly outperformed the teacher-led remediation group. The end of this presentation was supposed to say that when it comes to basic facts remediation, the computer is probably the way to go. But for deeper, more comprehensive math skills, the experience of a good, solid teacher couldn't be topped by a computer. The numbers didn't show that, though. They showed that the group working with the teacher stayed about the same, and that the group working on the computers showed some significant gains. So what does this all mean? According to the data collected for this experiment, the average score on the post-test of the students who were working on First in Math outperformed the teacher-led remediation group in both basic facts and problem solving. The computer outperformed the teacher. This makes me extremely curious about lengthening the experiment. If 17 days of remediation causes a slight increase for students on the computer, would a 34 days of remediation cause a doubled increase, or a squared increase, or no increase at all? Could I duplicate the results if I flipped around the groups again, or worked with an entirely different grade level or ability level? Remember, my kids were all low achieving. As I'm sure it always does, my research created more questions than answers. The bottom line is this: we need to do more research, lots more research, if we can make any statements about the best way to remediate students, low achieving or otherwise. But to go back to my original question, are these artificially intelligent, web-based mathematics remediation programs worth the time, effort, and money that they cost? Yes, maybe. We need to do some more research, but for now, let's say at the very least, they're not harming the students, and they might, just might, be the future of mathematics remediation.